A couple of weeks ago, I told you about the FCC's attempt to reclassify cell phone data as broadband. Now, they were going to be voting on this on, I believe, February 3rd, but they recently announced that they're completely disarming. They're backing away from this. Wired's Clint Finley reports internet activists just got some unexpected good news from an unexpected source. Last summer, the Federal Communications Commission floated the possibility of lowering its threshold for connections to be considered broadband. Now, it's backing away from that idea. The FCC announced Thursday that it will continue to define home broadband as connections that are 25 megabits per second. The commission also established a new standard for mobile broadband as a connection of 10 megabits per second or higher, and said it had rejected the idea, which it had floated last year, of labeling mobile internet service as an adequate replacement for home broadband. Consumer groups and advocates for rural communities had worried that changing the definition of broadband would enable the government to minimize the so-called digital divide between communities with speedy internet access and those without. Had the FCC decided to count slower connections as broadband or accepted mobile connections as adequate, it would have effectively shifted many areas now considered underserved by broadband providers to be considered as adequately served. That could translate into less funding for broadband projects in communities stuck with low connections. Thursday, the commission said it would not redefine broadband. However, the FCC said enough progress is being made to conclude that advanced telecommunications technologies are reaching the public at a reasonable pace. The commission referred to the FCC's recent decision to jettison its Obama-era net neutrality rules as an example of the action it's taken in the past year to advance broadband deployment, citing its questionable claim that the rules led to a decline in broadband infrastructure investment. Democratic commissioners Jessica Rosenworcel and Minion Clyburn welcomed the decision not to change the definition of broadband, but rejected the conclusion that broadband is being reasonably and timely deployed. So this is really interesting to me, and I'm kind of puzzled as to why the FCC would back down from something that they previously wanted to push for, because, the FCC demonstrated last year that they don't care at all. You have 24 million comments now submitted to the FCC telling them to leave net neutrality alone, and they did it anyway. With hubris while they did it. They were condescending and cocky about it, and they basically laughed in our faces while they were doing it. So when it came to them reclassifying cell data as broadband, I thought, oh, this is a foregone conclusion. Of course they're going to do it. But all of a sudden they backed down. So what gives here? To me, even though I was initially excited about this, because of course we want the standards for broadband in America to increase, not decrease, but certainly I was excited, but a little bit skeptical. What's going on here? So I think perhaps what it is that the FCC, they bit off a little bit more than they can chew. And after getting so much pushback from the American people, I think that the Republican commissioners on the FCC, Ajit Pai, Brendan Carr, Mike O'Reilly, they're basically saying, okay, we're going to have to pull the brakes because we're rousing too much suspicion right now. People know that we are doing nothing but the bidding of the broadband industry, and they know that lowering standards makes it easier for them to offer a shadier internet for higher prices. And I think that maybe they just thought, we can't keep doing this. Maybe we have to take a break. Certainly, it's not over. There's gonna be other things that come up that allow them to facilitate a decline of the internet in America. When Ajit Pai became the FCC commissioner, or the FCC chair now, he basically stated he really wants to bridge the digital divide, but we found out that was bullshit because he's doing things that are contrary to what would in fact bridge the digital divide, and repealing net neutrality. That just flies in the face of bridging the digital divide, because net neutrality, repealing that facilitates less access to websites, which means less access to the internet. So I don't know really what's going on here, and I don't necessarily have any plausible theories that can explain why they decided to back off, other than them just realizing we're doing a little bit too much now. Maybe we need to pump the brakes, wait a year or two, and then come back to it. But certainly, if they are going to still do more, we still have to keep the pressure on them. But I think it's probably going to occur further down the line, because they know states are rising up to challenge their net neutrality repeal. You see it going to the courts. So they're going to have to gear up and really defend that vote, which I don't think they're going to be able to do successfully. So maybe they don't want to take on too much of a workload right now. Maybe they don't want to piss off too many people, although too late. But I don't know what this is, but I'm glad. I'm not going to give them credit for not doing something they wanted to do that was shitty, but certainly I'll welcome their decision to not further fuck up the internet like they were planning to do. So this is good news.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.